Hey y'all, it's Bookishrealm and I'm back with another video today. I am here to do my 2022 TBR. Now this is interesting because I typically do not do TBRs. Like, I don't do a monthly TBR. If you've never noticed, it just is not my thing because I usually don't stick to what I read. But these are some books that I really want to read in 2022. Things that I need to finish, things that I need to start, things that have been on my radar, things that I have already started and I just need to power through. Some read-alongs that I'm a part of, so I've added those books to this list. So we're just going to look at this as a kind of overview of some things that I am hoping to pick up in 2022. I know that you have probably seen all the videos that are 22 books that I want to read in 2022, and yes, this does include 22 titles. However, some of these include like an author's body of work or a complete series. So technically this is more than 22 books, so it's kind of weird for me to say 22 in 2022 because it's definitely more than 22. But we're going to go ahead and jump in. And some of this stuff, like I said, I have started. Some of this stuff is read-along stuff. Some of this stuff is just things that I've had on my eye for a long time. And hopefully this year I will get the opportunity to read them. And also, it's going to feel like a lot of books, but it's okay. I am doing very well with my reading this year so far. At the time of filming this video, I am over 40 books finished for the month of January, so we're hoping to keep that same energy up. So the first set of books that I'm holding up are actually representations of a read-along that is happening this year. So if you did not know, Bree from Lockbooktician and Nicole from Who Picked This Book have been doing a Uncle Rick read-along since last year. They read through all the Percy Jackson books, all the Magnus Chase books, all of the Kane Chronicle books, all of the Trials of Apollo books. Like, they have been plowing through. The next phase of their read-along is going to be doing the Rick Riordan Presents books. So I am behind on the actual, like, the Percy Jackson stuff because I really want to reread Heroes of Olympus before I jump into the Trials of Apollo. So in order for me to kind of do that, I'm kind of behind on that. So I thought, okay, why not? I will just jump in whenever they decide to do the Rick Riordan Presents stuff. So these two books are just indicative of the fact that I'm going to be continuing or starting, not continuing because I haven't started, but I'm going to be starting my read of the Rick Riordan Presents books with Nicole and Bree this year. The first one is going to be the first week of February. I believe their live shows are always on Thursdays, but it's going to be that first week of February, and the first book that they're going to be reading for the Rick Riordan Presents is Arusha and the End of Time. So I'm glad that I already have this book and I have it checked out on audio, so I'm going to be doing a blended read. I'll be sure to link any information that they have on the read-along down in the description box below, and then link the live show, which I think is already posted on one of their channels, up in the card symbol above. The next person that I have on this list is not one book. It's not even a series. It's wanting to make it through her body of work. So that individual is Christina C. Jones. I don't even know what books I may put on the cover, or if I may just choose, or put on the screen, I may just choose a single book. But this is indicative of the fact that I want to work my way through Christina C. Jones's backlist. And I did a lot of reading of her books last year. I think I read anywhere in between 10 to 15 of her books last year. The thing about it is that Christina C. Jones has an extensive bibliography. I mean, she's probably somewhere in the 70s at this point when we talk about books. So I have a lot of reading to do, but it's something that I really want to do because I enjoy her so much as a writer. I think that she has such a valuable skill set when we're talking about like romance as a genre and Black love romance. She does so many amazing things. She can write in so many subgenres of romance and it still be extremely well written. So I just want to I just have to plow. Like, I have to plow through, y'all. I really have to plow through, and I think that what I need to do is sit down and make a checklist of the books that I have not read, and then take a handful of those and read them each month. So hopefully if I revisit this goal at the end of the year, hopefully maybe I have accomplished some of these things, like some of these books. I don't know if I'm going to finish all of it. I highly doubt I'm going to finish her entire backlist this year, but I really want to get the majority of it read this year. The next one that I'm holding up here is a bind up of the Inheritance trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. So I am holding this up because I read the first book in the Inheritance trilogy last year. It was on my top books of 2021. I really enjoyed it, but I still haven't finished book 2 and book 3. So there is a read-along going on for the Inheritance trilogy with Chloe from Thistle and Verse, Shay with Hobbies. I think Shamla's a part of it. I know Deidre has been on the live sprints, and I feel like I'm missing one or two other people who may be a part of at least the live sprints. I don't know if they're actually running the read-along itself, but I will link all that information down in the description box below. I am so excited to hop in and finally finish the series. It has such a beautiful like political dynamic to it, and I realized when I read Daughter of the Moon Goddess this month that I really like political based fantasy, and I feel like the Inheritance trilogy has the politics behind it. Then there's this mythological aspect because gods and goddesses are involved in this entire thing. I just feel like I'm really going to enjoy book 2 and 3 because I left book 1 really wanting more. I just never got the opportunity to pick up book 2 and 3, and the political intrigue just kind of kept me on my toes the entirety of the book. So with that being said, I'm going to now hop in, since they've already finished the first book and I had already read the first book. I'm now going to hop into their read along and pick up books number 2 and 3 in this trilogy. The next book that I have here is from one of my favorite OG Black like youth writers, you know, chrono cross between children's and teen stuff, is Sharon Draper, and this is Tears of a Tiger. This is the first book in the Hazelwood trilogy. I eventually also want to make it through Sharon Draper's backlist. I've read a couple of her books and I really enjoy her, but this is an older title that was written in the 90s, and I believe she got the John Steptoe Award for New Talent for this book in like 94. So this is an older book. It just has a cover remake, and this is one of those earlier Black YA titles, and it is about a young boy who is in high school and he ends up dying in a tragic accident, and everybody's having a difficult time coping with it, but more in particular his best friend Andy, who was driving the car when the incident happened, and he's trying to cope with having to literally watch his best friend die. So it's not a long book, but and it's written in a very cool format. Like there's parts of it that's kind of in letter format, but if I do finish this one this year, I do want to move on to the next 2 books in the series, which are Forged by Fire and Darkness Before Dawn. But I've had this on my shelf for a while and I've been meaning to read it, so it's definitely time for me to pick it up. The next book that I have here is Kindred by Octavia E. Butler, which is one, once again, that I've been meaning to read for a long time. I've had this on a couple of TBRs and I hadn't gotten the chance to pick it up. I am a little bit slower when it comes to reading fantasy and science fiction. I think I said that in my 2022 goals video. Science fiction and fantasy have never been my strongest areas in terms of genre. So I am trying very hard this year to work towards picking up more science fiction and fantasy, which I have done pretty well with so far this month. I think I've picked up 3 to 4 science fiction fantasy books, which is definitely not my usual style. So Kindred is a science fiction book. Octavia E. Butler is a well-known Black science fiction author. I was really inspired to finally just dive into her stuff because I read E.B. Zaboy's new biography on Octavia E. Butler, which I'll put a picture of it on the screen, and by the time that this video goes out, I think the book will just now like being released, and it was a really nice compilation of like short stories and just information about Octavia E. Butler, and I was like, you know what, I just feel very compelled and very inspired now to just finally just take that leap and dive into it, even if I'm not generally comfortable with science fiction and fantasy. This book itself focuses on a young Black woman by the name of Dana who ends up being pulled back in time, and she is in antebellum South, and she's pulled back in time to save this white white man who is drowning. I believe that he is the son of the plantation owner, and she keeps getting pulled back over and over, and each time she ends up staying longer and longer and longer, and it keeps getting more dangerous, and it's kind of uncertain whether she'll even make it back to her own time period. So this, I think, is just going to be good. Of course, I've heard nothing but great things about Kindred, and I think this is probably one of her most well-known works outside of the Parable of a Sower, and I need to suck it up and just dive in. Of course, y'all know that this is going to include comics and graphic novels and manga, because how could it not? So I have two basically hardcover deluxe editions here. This is Batman hardcover edition number 1, Batman hardcover edition number 2, and this is the Rebirth Batman. This is Tom King's run. I've talked about these a little bit. This was a part of my end of the year reading plans for 2021, but December just ended up being a really, really tough month, which y'all know, and I never did get to pick these up. Now, as I've said before in a couple of videos, I have read parts of this before, of this first hardcover edition, but what I'm thinking is I may go back and reread it. The reason why I'm reading these editions anyway, or why I'm reading the Tom King run, is because I still have not read anything like related to Joker War, and I'm excited to get to Joker War because so much of what's happening in DC and Gotham is related to Joker War right now. So I definitely want to fly through these, not even fly through them like I'm not retaining the information, but like take my time reading them, but actually get through these hardcover editions so I can really just be caught up on everything. A lot of my comic book reading is me trying to catch up because I always end up falling behind and I'm not sure how. But yeah, so I will be picking these two up. Hopefully I will be making my way through the rest of the hardcover deluxe editions throughout the year, and when I check back in at the end of the year, hopefully I can say I have had them read. The next book that I have here is Love in the Time of Cholera by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and this is one that I've been meaning to read by this author for a while. I have read him before, but I have not read this specific work, and I am trying to pick up a little bit more translated works outside of just graphic novels and manga and all that stuff. Like, I'm trying to do better about that, so this is one that I do want to pick up in terms of a translated work. I have more, but this is one specifically that's kind of high up there on the radar. This is about a man who falls in love with this woman, and he declares his love for her, and she ends up choosing not to go with him, and she marries this wealthy doctor, and he kind of just passes his time away. I believe it says on the back that he has like over 600 love affairs during this time, but he patiently waits and keeps his heart for her, and when her husband dies, he decides 51 years later he's going to go back and declare his love for her again. I am very interested in seeing how this story is going to pan out, how it's going to work. I cannot wait to pick this up. This is a copy that has been sitting on my shelf for some time, and I literally am trying to do better about reading from my shelf this year. I notice already this month of January, a great portion of what I have been reading is stuff that I have borrowed from the library, and that's not a bad thing because I'm using my library, but I also want to have some balance in shopping my own shelves, and this has been on here for a long time, so I need to make sure that I at least attempt to pick it up. The next one that I have here is a middle grade series that I want to start catching up on because I think we're up to like book 13 or something like that in the series, and that is the Wings of Fire series by Tuti Sutherland. This is one of my favorite middle grade dragon series, and surprisingly, like, I do very well with like children and middle grade fantasy. I don't do well with adult fantasy and science fiction, and even sometimes YA, but middle grade and children's fantasy and science fiction, I do very well with reading these. I don't know, maybe because I think the world is a little bit easier for me to grasp. It's not as complex. But here I have in my hands the 4th book, which is The Dark Secret, and the 5th book, which is The Brightest Night. I have read books 1 through 3 already and absolutely adored them. If you don't know anything about the Wings of Fire series, it is about these 5 dragonettes, and they are prophesized to basically save the entire kingdom. So we meet these 5 dragonettes in the first book, and after that, in each subsequent book, we get one of their perspectives, and they're really like really, really intriguing, and they're also kind of a little bit on the dark side. I am surprised at the kind of like the graphic aspect of some of these. There's a lot of betrayal, and there's a little bit of like dragon political intrigue in it because of the different kingdoms. Each of these dragons come from a different kingdom, and these kingdoms all have their distinct like abilities. So for example, I will pull some from the beginning of the book. That way you haven't, like, there's sand wings, there's mud wings, there's sky wings and sea wings, and they each have like a ruler, and they each have their abilities. So I am excited to pick these up. The first two books I felt like in the series were a little bit on the slow side. By the time I got to the third book, I was like, oh, this is good. This is really good. So I may go back and do a reread of the first three books, or maybe just do a reread of the third book and then jump into books 4 and 5 and then continue my way through the series. The next one that I have here that I've been meaning to read, which has been getting a lot of praise and awards lately, is We Are Not Free by Tracy Chee. This was a National Book Award finalist, and it's been getting awards. Past that, this focuses on 14 Japanese American teens who are living in San Francisco as World War II is beginning, and they have pretty much lived a relatively normal life, but of course World War II starts, Pearl Harbor, and then all of a sudden their worlds are flipped upside down. They have things like registrations, curfews, they start to get evicted, and then the incarcerations begin in the internment camps. So we're looking at these 14 teens and their interconnectedness and their community, and how they are going to adjust dealing with the racism now that is plaguing the country against their specific community. I think this is one that I'm really going to enjoy. I definitely want to read more books about the experience of Japanese Americans during the specific time in U.S. history, especially as it relates to the internment camps. And oh gosh, I just feel like this is going to be heartbreaking, but it's going to be a good read. The next thing that I'm going to include here is Food Wars. Now, I've only selected 5 volumes, which is volume 11, 12, 13, if I can get this right, 14, and 15. So I have been set on trying to do a reread and a final read through Food Wars, because the manga series is complete and I haven't finished it yet, and this keeps popping up. I think it's because it's daunting thinking about having to make it through all of the 30-something volumes in a single year. So I think if I just say, and I'm probably going to end up reading more, but I think if I limit myself to saying I need to make it through 5 volumes of the series this year, I will feel better about continuing the read, instead of thinking like, okay, I'm only on volume 11 right now and I have over 20 volumes to finish by the end of the year. While manga is easy to fly through, I think for me personally, sometimes I can get into a series and be like, okay, I just need a break from the series. So because of that, I only chose 5 volumes. If you didn't know, Food Wars is one of my favorite shonen manga. It is about a group of teens that go to this institute. It is in Japan, and they are becoming these premier chefs, and there's a lot of different competitions. They compete against each other. They're trying to make this group of 10, this is like the council of 10, everybody wants to be on that because those are the top students at this institute, and I think it's just really great. The manga is the manga is great. The anime is great too. I really enjoy the anime, but I'm gonna give myself 5 volumes to finish. I've done the same with another manga series. If you didn't know, this is Nana. This is one of my favorite shoujo series of all time, and I have volume 9, volume 10, volume 11, volume 12, and volume 13. This series is incomplete. There are, I believe, 21 or 22 volumes, and it's been on hiatus for over 10 years now. I think it's 2022. This series has been on hiatus for 13 years. I highly doubt it's ever going to get finished, but I do want to finish what's out because I've been holding out hope that maybe Aizawa would maybe just make the decision one day to come back and finish it, but I highly doubt that that's going to end up happening. So I'm just going to finish whatever's out there. Once again, I'm not trying to push myself to read through the entire series this year, but at least make it through 5 volumes. And this series is about 2 women by the name of Nana who end up both going to Tokyo to kind of live out their dreams, and they end up becoming the best of friends. It is definitely a slice of life. There are some really interesting parts, some really heartbreaking parts, and I absolutely love it. The anime is also really great, and I can't wait to finish it and do a rewatch of the anime. The next group of books that I have here are are the track series books by Jason Reynolds. I've read the first two, which is Ghost and Patina, and I need to finish the series by reading Sunny and Lou. These are about a group of kids that run track, whoever shot at the Junior Olympics, and each one of these books is basically from the perspective of one of the characters. So Sunny is clearly going to focus on Sunny, and Sunny would prefer to dance rather than run track. He actually doesn't like running track. He's only running track because he knows that his teammates need him. So I'm really interested in this since Sunny doesn't even want to be a part of the team. And then the final book, Lou, of course, is about Lou, who is the co-captain of the team. He definitely feels like he could lead his team to victory, but then he has some hurdles in his life that may end up getting in the way. If you have like any, like I guess would say upper children to middle grade readers who really enjoy like sports, I would definitely recommend checking out the track series. They are great books that focus on like the sport aspect of it, but also some things that each of the kids is dealing with, and of course they're by Jason Reynolds, so you should definitely read them. So the next set of books that I have here is once again an author's body of work, and I want to read more of Renee Watson. I have 3 of her books: Watch Us Rise, Piecing Me Together, and then Some Places More Than Others. So Watch Us Rise is about 2 students, Jasmine and Chelsea, who are interested in joining this poetry club at school, and then they realize that this poetry club is only interested in reading the classics. So they decide to form their own club that focuses on ways that they can write and use art to really shine on women's voices, and they end up joining, or I think they created this whole entire online platform called Write Like a Girl, or maybe it's a platform that already exists, and they're writing submissions to it, and their posts end up going viral, and then there are people who really support them, and then there's a little bit of pushback, and then the school is saying that they're threatening to shut everything down because they're instigating. So I'm really interested in this. I believe that this one has kind of a little bit of a mixed media format to it as well, which will make it an interesting read. Piecing Me Together is about a young girl by the name of Jade who feels like in order to succeed she has to get out of her poor neighborhood. So her mother is kind of convincing her or telling her that she has to take advantage of every opportunity that comes her way. So she takes buses every day to go to this private school, and she just gets kind of tired of feeling like she needs support from people, and she does not like that people keep seeing her as someone that needs to be fixed, and she just wants her voice to be heard. So I think this is kind of a coming of age story and her kind of figuring out what she wants to do, and this is a Newbery Honor book as well as a Coretta Scott King Award winner, so it is awarded up. And the last one, Some Places More Than Others, is about a young girl who ends up deciding to go to New York to meet with her father's family, specifically meet her grandfather Earl, who she has not met before. And when she gets there, things just don't go the way that she expects them to go, but she still is curious about her family. She still has questions, and she learns that in a lot of ways her and her dad are more connected than what she anticipated. So if I know anything about Renee Watson, this is definitely probably going to be a little bit more hard-hitting than the summary gives it justice for. So yes. The next book here that I have is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. This is one that's another read-along, and this is being hosted by Erica. I'm actually a part of this read-along, so of course I'm going to include this because we're going to be reading the Poppy War trilogy this year. Our first live show for this book is going to be at the end of February, I believe, so you still have time to pick it up and read it. What I will do is I will link Erica's announcement video in the card symbol above, and then I will leave all the relevant information down below. But I have started the Poppy War before. I think I got about 40% into it, but then something happened. I think I was listening to an audio, and then my audio hold had to go back in, and I didn't finish it, and then I just never picked it back up. So now is the time. Now is the time in which I need to go back and read these books, and I know that they get kind of graphic, but I know that BookTube really adores the Poppy War, and I'm just excited to read it. The next one that I have on this list is A Promised Land, Barack Obama. This is the first volume in what's supposed to be a 2-volume presidential memoir, and I have been reading a lot of political nonfiction in the past year or so, and so it's no surprise that I do want to pick up A Promised Land. The thing about this is that I have heard a lot of times that this does not read in the traditional sense of a memoir. This is a book that could be used as a political reference, as like a text for a collegiate class. So my expectations of going into this is it not necessarily reading as if it is a narrative that I would typically get with a presidential memoir. Now, I've heard great things about this book. I believe that it is one that is best consumed doing a blended read of it. I think that it ends right as Osama bin Laden is killed. I think that's the point at which it ends, but this is just one of the non-fiction political books that I do want to end up reading in 2022. I have a list going, but this is one that is a high priority for me. The next book that I have on this list is She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan, and this one is one that people have been raving about and have really enjoyed. This is about two children, one where the son is born with greatness and the daughter is born with nothingness. But what ends up happening is that a bandit attacks and the children end up becoming orphans, and it's actually the son who ends up dying, and then the daughter is the one who ends up surviving, and she takes on the identity of her brother and decides that she's not going to have the same fate. I literally, like I said, I have heard nothing but great things about She Who Became the Sun. This one is probably going to get read sooner than later because I put the audiobook on hold and I planned on doing a blended read of this one. The next set of books that I have here are representations for an entire series, and this is the Silky Stackhouse series. This is another read along that is happening, and it's being hosted by Bree and by Deidre. Bree from Locked Booktition and Deidre from Shade Tree Reads. And the first live show, by the time this goes up, the first live show for the first book will be on Friday. I will link all the relevant information and all that stuff in the cards above and down in the description box. I know it's a lot of read-alongs going on this year, but we are going to be reading through these, and I'm excited because I've had these on my shelf for a while. I have read the first book, so I am currently rereading the first book. It's not long. None of these books are long. They're like 200 pages and some change, but I'm excited and nervous to read it because I heard it gets kind of wooky and crazy some parts until like you get to the later parts of the series and they get kind of crazy, but we'll see, and I'm definitely excited to join in their read along of this series. Next on my list, I have another author's body of work that I want to explore, and that's Beverly Jenkins. So I read my first Beverly Jenkins historical last year. I have read Beverly Jenkins before because I read one of her contemporary books, and so I want to read a little bit more. I actually want to go back and revisit her contemporary books as well, but I have her historicals here. So I have Nighthawk, I have Wild Sweet Love, I have Captured, and then I also have Through the Storm. So hopefully I can explore some of these books this year. I have some more books here that are representative of another author's body of work, and that author is Brandon Sanderson. So I have read Brandon Sanderson before. This is not the first time that I've read Brandon Sanderson. I have started the Mistborn trilogy before. So this is, if I can hold it up right, maybe. So many books. I've started the Mistborn trilogy. So I read Mistborn a while back. I have to go back and reread it because it's been so long since I read it. But I really want to finish the trilogy, which is the Hero of Ages is in this trilogy, and so is the Well of Ascension. I don't know if I did those in order or out of order. I also have the kind of short book that is in between this series and the next Mistborn trilogy, which is the Alloy of Law. And then I have the Reckoners trilogy that I still need to finish. As you can see, I've read Firefight like 2 or 3 times already, in hopes and attempts of finishing the series, and I still haven't done it, but I'm going to do it because I need to read Calamity. I don't know when Brandon Sanderson is going to revisit this series. He put some stuff on his website saying that he was going to revisit it. I just don't know when that's going to be a thing that's going to happen. I also have the first book in the, I don't know what this is, it the Skyward trilogy? Is that what it's called? Anyway, I have the first book, Skyward, which is more science fiction than fantasy of his, that I have not read yet. And then his first published book, which is Elantris, and I have not read that. So I don't know what of his I am going to read this year, because also I also have the Alcatraz and the Evil Librarians books. I have the 5 books and the 6th book I believe comes out this year. So I need to read something by him this year because I own too much of his stuff not to have read it, not to have picked anything up by him just yet. But I will figure out what I want to read by him soon. Speaking of fantasy, I have The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. Okay. So this is a big goal of mine. I am not the biggest fantasy reader. However, I have had this book on my shelf in hopes of maybe trying it. I don't know if I'm going to like it. I don't know if it's going to be a thing that I continue. I don't know how I'm going to feel about it. I do know that I have it. I put the audiobook on hold so I could do a blended read so I can see how I feel and what I want to do. And I think I should just try it because the worst case scenario is I don't like it, I DNF it, and I move on with my life. But I don't know if I'm going to like it unless I try. And this is one that I need to take my time with, know that I can't rush it, know that it's not going to be one that I'm going to fly through, and I just have to be patient with myself. Because there are people who are high fantasy readers who struggle with some of these books in some parts of the books. I know that they get really intriguing when Brandon Sanderson steps in to finish them after Robert Jordan passed away, but we'll see what happens. We're gonna see what happens. I'm gonna try, and if I don't like it, I don't like it, and I could just move on with my life. And the last thing that I have on my list is once again an author's body of work because I own so many of his books, and I think that is just time that I actually decided to pick up something. I have 4 series by this individual, and that is Brandon Mull. So by Brandon Mull, I have his Candy Shop duology. I also have the first book in the Fablehaven series. I have the 3 books in the Beyonder series, which I haven't even opened up the box set yet. And then I have the box set of the 5 Kingdoms series. So Brandon Mull is a very well-known middle grade fantasy writer. A lot of middle grade fantasy readers enjoy Brandon Mull. I believe that he just had this another series that I'm missing, but the 5th or 6th book to that series just came out this year or last year. And I just am like, goodness gracious, I think it's a Dragon Watch. That's what it is. This Dragon Watch series where the 5th or 6th book just came out last year. And Brandon Mull is a very good, from what I've heard, a very good middle grade fantasy writer. And I have, let's see, this 8, 9, 10. I have 11 of his books and I haven't read any. And I think I just need to just read something because honestly, y'all, when I think about it in the grand scheme of things, and that's my last person that's on this list, I think about the fact that I own a lot of these books, and while I own a lot of these books, I enjoy them. I think it gives me a wider selection. I do need to actively really start trying to read a little bit more from my own shelves than I have been in the past. I'm thinking about the fact that I'm hoping to be moving soon within like the next year, and the idea of having to move all of these books is just like, it's daunting, and I need to start the weeding process of at least trying some of this stuff out. And if I don't like it, then it's time to give it to my library or give it back to the community so they have access to these books, because it's just a lot of books on my shelf that I have not read. I will never be filming one of those videos where I tell you all the books that I own that I have not read, because I'm not going to put myself out there like that. I'm not finishing myself. But anyway, thanks y'all for watching this video. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content from me, click the subscribe button and hit the bell for notifications. As I said, I will leave all the relevant information to all the read-alongs that are going on in the card symbols above and in the description box below. If you are interested in joining in any of those, make sure you do. It's a lot of great things happening in the community this year. Let me know what are some of your top books that you want to read in 2022, and see if there's any crossover for anything that I have on my list, and I will be back with another video soon.